So, check this out, people. Today I want to talk about homelessness back home in the US compared to homelessness here in the Philippines, right? Because we all know that the Philippines is a third world country. And we know that the US is a first world country. And that the US is the richest country in the world, in the history of all the world, right? And if you come to the Philippines, right, for the first time, you're going to find that Filipinos, for some reason, well, not for some reason, because they watch TV just like we watch TV back home in the US, right? They believe that what they see on TV about the US is real, right? When they see people celebrating Christmas, for example, when they see people sitting at the table during Thanksgiving, right? They think that people in the US actually do these things. But I'm sure, though, there was a time when families sat together during Thanksgiving. I'm sure that there was a time when people celebrated Christmas and holidays together as a family. Now, it's not about the holidays. It's not about Christmas. It's not about Thanksgiving. It's not about any of these things. It's about family, right? It's about the image that television shows the rest of the world, but the people who actually live in the US see what the US is really like, right? We see what America is really like. And so when you live in the US, or those who have never lived in the US and travel to the US for the first time, they're going to be disappointed. They're going to be disappointed because a lot of what we experience in the US, they don't show on television in other countries. Yes, there are countries that hate us, who show the reality of what's going on in the US, but because they're not actually aware of what's going on in the US, they don't always portray the US in a real light, right? For example, the homelessness, the drugs, right? And all of the nonsense that goes on in the US, right? People, you have to excuse the background noise. This is the Philippines. All of their buildings are made of concrete, right? Which is, it's hard to, to imagine that even through concrete, you could still hear the traffic, right? No matter how high you are in a hotel, no matter how low you are, you're always going to hear the traffic, which for some reason I could never understand, right? But anyway, so when people travel to the US for the very first time, right, they're going to be disappointed because they're going to see a side of America that they don't see in reality. Because a lot of people believe, right, that America is great, and America is great when it comes to jobs, when it comes to working, when it comes to capitalism, right? If you want to become rich, all you have to do is go to the US and you can open a business, you can grow, you can do a lot, right? The problem with America is that you have two political parties, right? One is trying to make America great, and the other party is trying to bring America down, which it doesn't make any sense to me, right? How you have a Democratic Party who says that they're for the people, but yet they have created crime, right, by allowing crime and criminals to participate in crimes, and then through leniency allow them to be free to then return back to doing more crimes, right? And then you have the drug addictions, which the same Democratic Party encourages by giving drugs out to people and giving out needles and so on and so on, right? And defunding the police. And for some reason, they believe that this is making America better. And what they've done, they've created an America that today looks worse than a third world country, right? Because here in the Philippines, there's homelessness. And just like everywhere in the world, there's crimes, there's criminals, there's drugs, right? But there's a difference here between the drug addicts, the criminals, and the homeless people especially. Because when people are homeless in the Philippines, they're not homeless because of drugs, the majority of them. They're homeless because they were born in poverty. And unlike America, where you have the opportunity to get out of poverty, you can't do that here. If you're born a lower class person in this country, the odds are that you will remain a lower class person up until you die. You will earn $10 a day for the rest of your life until you're dead, right? There's no way to get out of poverty in this country. And so the majority of people who are homeless are people who were born in poverty and who will remain in poverty. Parents who have children who should not be having children because these children are living in their suffering, right? And so when you see homeless people in the streets here in the Philippines, you're gonna see children 3 years old, barefoot, naked, 10 years old, out on the street, begging, barefoot, dirty, right? You're gonna see men and women cooking out on the street using wood to cook rice on the sidewalk, to heat up water to bathe. You're gonna see people bathing, right? But these people are on the streets because there is no way out of poverty here, right? In the US, there's no excuse for those who are impoverished. No excuse at all, right? Now, I know a lot of people are going to criticize me for the things I'm saying because the majority of people who believe that America has a homeless problem have never grown up on the streets. They come from middle-class families, most likely white, right? And have no concept of what homelessness really means. So today they want to call them unhoused, right? Because they want to be politically correct. And so they want to say that America has a homeless problem when in reality, America has an addiction problem. And a lot of these people want to tell you that the reason why there's an addiction problem in the US is because of the homelessness, right? So what they're saying is this, that these people are becoming homeless, and after they become homeless, 9 out of 10 of them turn to drugs. It's not the other way around, right? They don't accept reality that the way homelessness occurs in America is that people are doing drugs, they're becoming addicted, they're becoming irresponsible because they would rather keep their money for drugs than to pay their bills. And so when it's time to pay the rent or time to buy drugs, they choose the drugs over paying their rent. And then eventually they will find themselves on the streets begging, not for food, but for drugs. Unlike in the Philippines, when a homeless man or woman or child is begging, 9 out of 10 of them are doing it because they're trying to eat, right? And America should be embarrassed that it is the richest country in the world, but yet today, in the year 2025, the US looks worse than the Philippines does when you're walking down the streets. You can walk through the streets of New York, California, Chicago, New Jersey, all of the major cities, and the US looks worse than a third world country. The airport, JFK, LaGuardia, and trust me people, for those people who have never left America, who is always talking about how great America is, leave America one time. When I say leave America, I don't mean go to Cancun, Mexico for the weekend or for a week on vacation before you have to return back to work. I mean leave the US, go somewhere to another country outside of the continent of the US. So you can see what the airports look like everywhere else in the world. And then compare the airports in the US to Dubai's airport, Taipei's airport, Manila airport, the airport in Korea. Compare the airports in these countries to the airports in the US, and you tell me how great you believe America is. Because it's just an illusion. It's an illusion. America is the richest country in the world, but today America is falling behind on everything else, especially human infrastructure. When I say human infrastructure, I don't mean bridges and telephone lines and electricity and the streets, even though they're collapsing also, right? Because we're wasting money on nonsense like illegals rather than focusing on our own country, right? And so they want us to believe that the homelessness in the US isn't caused because of drugs. It's caused because there's not enough housing. There's not enough housing in the richest country in the world. This is why these bums, these lowlifes, are on the streets. And yes, that's what they are, bums and lowlifes. You know why I can say that? Because I was homeless for 3 months. I lived in a homeless shelter for 3 months, the maximum time allowed before they kick you out. And I seen homeless people come and go. And it wasn't because they were on the streets because they were sick. It wasn't because they lost their job. It wasn't because their wife threw them out, because the house burned down. The majority of them were coming out of prison. The majority of them were homeless due to drug addiction. And each time one of these homeless bums was housed by the shelter into an apartment where they didn't even have to pay much rent, a very small amount of their income, whatever it was. If they had $100 a week, all they had to do was pay $10 a month on their rent, and the shelter, through donations and through certain agencies, would pay the majority of the rent. And within 2 weeks, these people were right back on the streets because they would rather use those $10 a month to buy drugs than to pay their fucking rent. And that is the difference between being homeless in America and being homeless in the Philippines. Yeah, the American homeless are bums, and the Filipino homeless, the majority of them, 9 out of 10, are just poor. And no matter how much they try, they cannot get out of it. And in America, there are programs for the homeless. But instead of these agencies admitting that there's a drug addiction problem and this is the cause of the homelessness in America, they want to deny that and say that no, it has nothing to do with drugs, it has to do with housing. Why? Because they want grants. They want money. So let's keep these people addicted. This is why they give them drugs. Let's keep them on the streets. Let's keep on asking the government for support to support these agencies, these homeless agencies, and then let's pocket the money, because that's what they do. Because none of these homeless people get the help they need. You know why? Because they're not homeless. They have a place to go. They have mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, cousins. Some of them even have jobs. But they don't want to be responsible human beings, because being responsible means not enough drugs for them to do. Compare that to the Philippines, where I've lived now for almost 2 years. And I've seen true homelessness. Okay? And so, when America starts to accept its faults, right? The downfalls of its own people, the American citizens, starts to accept that there's a problem in America. Because look, I'm going to tell you right now, the last administration has destroyed our country, truly destroyed it intentionally, by allowing illegals, by defunding the police, by giving out drugs to these addicts, creating homelessness, right? by teaching our little boys that they can be girls and our little girls that they can be boys, by allowing drag queens to perform drag shows for kindergartens, right? I mean, you're not going to tell me that these people are pathetic and low-life pieces of garbage, right? And this is what America has become. So for anyone who wants to visit America from the Philippines, this is my advice to you. Don't go. Because America is not a safe place for anyone, not for the Native Americans. And when I say Native Americans, I mean those who were born and raised in America. It's not safe for tourists. It's not safe for anyone. America has been a dangerous place since I can remember, and I'm 57 years old. It's never been safe. Okay, what you see on TV isn't real. What you watch about America being great, it is great if you want to be rich. But take that money, when you go to America, make that money, take that money, and then go back to your country with that money where it's a lot safer than it is in the US. And don't get me wrong, there's crimes everywhere in the world, but here in the Philippines, the police don't police. They don't police. The police sit in their police stations, barbecuing, chilling, relaxing, watching TV, sitting on their phones, doing nothing. They don't police because they don't have to. Here, when a crime happens, there is no 911. Hell, I don't even know the number to the police station. Why? Because if there's an issue and you have to get involved with the police, you got to get in touch with the police. You have to get in touch with the barangay captain who is in charge of the community that you live in, and he will then try to bring whatever issues that you may be having to a close, try to repair the issue, to fix it before going to the police. And if he cannot handle it, then he himself will involve the police. And then when the police show up, then you know there's a problem, because here the police don't show up unless there is a problem. And that's the difference between this third world country that I'm living in today and back home in the US, where I don't feel safe, where I've never been safe, where I carried a gun the majority of the times. If not, I carried a knife. If not, I walked with steel-toe shoes, always prepared and ready to fight and defend myself everywhere I went. And so this message is for those Filipinos who believe that, look, I get it, right? I get it. I tell people all the time, America is a great place to go and work. Make that money, take that money, and then leave. Go back to your country with that money where you can be safe and where you can do more with the American dollar than you can do back home in the US. Because in the US, a dollar is not worth a bag of chips. And in the Philippines, $1 is worth 4 bags of chips, and you still get change back. And that is the difference between actually living in the US and taking that American dollar outside of the US, somewhere else, and taking advantage of the value of the dollar. But in America, the dollar has no value. And so right now I'm in a hotel, which I spend a lot of time in hotels. I travel a lot while here in the Philippines. This hotel cost me less than $26 a night. And if you see some of the places I've stayed, I don't think I paid more than $32 a night to stay in these places. The Philippines is still living in the 1980s. The music, when you turn on the radio, you're gonna listen to 1980s soft rock. You're gonna listen to George Michael, Elton John, Scorpion. You're gonna hear Air Supply, Journey. You're gonna hear that kind of music everywhere you go. We're still living in the 80s here in the Philippines. And I don't mind, because the 80s was one of the best times back home in the US. Hell, when I was working back home in the US in the 1980s, I was a teenager. And I was able to pay my rent with 1 week's paycheck and still have $200 left over till next week to do whatever I wanted to do. And that was back in the 1980s. And today, in the year 2025, that's how I'm living again here in the Philippines, retired because I don't work. And so with a small pension that I get, or my Social Security, whatever you want to call it, I'm able to live here like a king, which I cannot do back home in the richest country in the world, which is full of homelessness, drugs, lawlessness, crime, inflation. Americans can't live in America anymore. And so anyone who's planning to go to America, especially today, when they're going after all of these migrants, right? Illegal migrants who came into the country illegally, and this mess was caused by the previous administration, the Biden administration, and now that Donald Trump is cleaning it up, they want to blame Donald Trump for doing what he's doing and for trying to put the country back to where it was pre the Biden administration that caused all of these issues with homelessness, with crime, with illegal migrants, with the sexualization of our children, was all caused by the previous administration. And now that we have a president that's trying to fix it, everybody wants to get mad because they believe that the world is going backwards or that America is going backwards. No, no one complained when they had to drop their children off at school so that a drag queen can perform a drag dance, a drag performance for their 5-year-old. No one was complaining about America going backwards when you joined the army and you saw men dressed as women in formation. The US was a laughingstock worldwide. Our military, all fucked up. And now that this president, this administration is trying to make us stronger, right? It's trying to make us stronger. It's trying to make us better. It's trying to make our men, our boys, men again, our young girls, women again, right? People want to say that America is going backwards. The fact is that America has a long way to go when it comes to regaining its strength, regaining its men, regaining its women, the family values that it once had, the celebration of holidays that once brought families together. The US has a long way to go. The Philippines has all of these things, all of it. They celebrate with family, before work, after work, during work. You have to come to this country to see how amazing these people are. And Filipinos, don't go to America. Don't. Not because Trump is going after illegals and you might get caught up in this whole exodus, right, that he's doing to these illegals. You may get caught up in it, because I've heard stories of a Filipina who has been traveling from Canada to the US with her documents, her green card, working, who was arrested and held for 12 days in jail before they found out that she was actually legal. The problem is that she got caught up in all of this nonsense, and it's possible that she may never be able to return back to the US. So the US is messed up right now, people. And again, I'm not blaming this administration that's trying to fix the problem that was caused by the previous administration. Unfortunately, these are the casualties of war. This is collateral damage. And when war happens, people, innocent people, are going to get caught up in it. And right now, a lot of innocent foreigners or aliens who are legal in the US may get caught up in this whole nonsense where this new administration is making sure that they deport every illegal out of our country. It's no one's fault but the previous administration. It's as if though you have a family of 5 young boys right inside the house. The mother leaves and say, hey, do me a favor, don't break anything, right? And when she returns, she finds the whole house a mess, right? The whole house is a mess. 3 boys out of the 5 boys went crazy, playing, jumping around, doing what they had to do. 2 of them didn't do anything, but they were there and they got caught up in the whole mess. And so they in turn were also punished, because that's how they do it in the army. One guy messes up, everybody pays for it. And that's what's happening now in the US. Biden messed up, everyone is paying for it, because this administration is trying to fix what they messed up. So in the end, people, Filipinos, stay here, stay in your country, stay in the Philippines. You have no idea how rich you are. You have no idea that Americans pay thousands of dollars to live for 2 weeks the way you've been living for the rest of your life. And for those Americans who think that these third world countries are poor because these people don't have 50-inch screen television or drive fancy cars or they live in huts, I've seen how much you're willing to pay to live like these people pay. Because a lot of these people live by the shore. They eat lobster, crab, and fish that back home in the US, we pay $50 a pound and they don't have to pay anything. Hell, you can buy shrimp here, 2 kilos of shrimp for less than $3. And for those Americans who don't know what a kilo is, 2.2 pounds worth of shrimp for about $3. And back home in the US, a kilo of shrimp will cost you about $30, if not more than that. And so, what you see on television, people who are not Americans, all of those fancy places and all the beauty and all of the nature, yes, that's part of America, but we don't live in those places. Most Americans live in cities. Most Americans live in reality. And the television is not reality. So what you're seeing here in the Philippines on television isn't real. America is a dumping ground today for the homeless, for drug addicts, for criminals, for pedophiles. And if you don't want to get caught up in the nonsense that's happening right now, I recommend that you stay here. Because I'm an American citizen, and people, I don't want to go